Hello everyone, I'm Diane Woodworth and welcome to the K-12 Corner today. And today I'm joined by Diane Funston, who is the superintendent here at Concord Community Schools. And our topic today is we're discussing a new high school diploma endeavor that's coming to Indiana schools. And then we're going to discuss a little bit its impact on students, staff, teachers, schools, the state, maybe the country. We'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah. So, Dan, I'd like to start by having you introduce yourself a little bit in terms of like, what's your background? What led you here to Concord Schools as superintendent?
Sure. Well, I was a social studies teacher and coach at Northern Wells Community Schools for 6 years. And when we had our second child, my wife was going to stay home for a little bit. And I'd had my administrative license and started to look for administrative license. I grew up in Lake County, and my wife is from Noble County, and so was hoping to find something, in between or in the area at least.
Sure.
And so actually ended up at John Glenn Schools.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And was there as assistant principal for a short time, and then was the high school principal there. We actually had moved to Plymouth when we went to John Glenn, and so my wife ended up working in the orthopedic industry in Warsaw, which she's still in now. But so then I went on to be the middle school principal in Plymouth after that, and then did that for 6 years, I think, and then was assistant superintendent in Plymouth. And then got out and actually spent 1.5 years as a director of e-learning for Five Star Technology out of Sellersburg, and consulted with leadership teams, really was my job, consulted with superintendents on, that was when Indiana was going through the major one-to-one rollouts, and I think districts were looking for, what is this going to look like in our schools, how do we train people, roll this out. We also had a partnership with Google at the time because everybody was adopting Google Apps at the time too. So, but yeah, long story short, I did that for 1.5 years, and I tell people like I missed like wearing the school colors being a part of the school and consulting too. I was on the road a ton, and my boys were involved in sports, and so anyways. Told my wife I need to interview. I'd never interviewed anywhere for a superintendent job, and applied for a job in Concord, Michigan, which is a really, really small village in Michigan. We had a little over 700 students in the whole district.
K-12, okay.
K-12, and we were actually Class C, which is like 2A in Indiana, if you can believe it. A lot of small school districts there, but but I interviewed, told my wife, don't worry, I won't take the job, just interviewing, and, long story short, we ended up there, and so was there for 4 years, and then when my youngest son, we have a daughter that's a sophomore, but when my son graduated high school, pretty sure my wife, Heidi, was moving back to Indiana with or without me. And so,
pretty sure.
So her parents are in Noble County. Her brother owns Yoder Farm Services in Topeka. And so we were kind of looking for this area. And Lynn Lehman has always been a friend of mine.
Sure.
And somebody that I picked up the phone and called when I needed advice on things. Even when I left and went to 5 Star, Lynn and I talked about that. And he called and said, hey, I think I have an opportunity for you, and you won't even have to change your voicemail.
That's right.
Still be superintendent of Concord Community Schools. And
right.
So interviewed and just finished my 4th year. So
I was trying to think, how long have you been here? 4 years, right?
4 years.
Yeah.
The first year we won't count. It was COVID, so.
It's true, that was.
Forget that.
Right. But I do remember reading in the paper, like, oh, he's coming from Concord, Michigan to Concord, Indiana. Okay, I guess it was meant to be or something, right?
Meant to be.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, it's good. It was good to have you as a colleague. I'm a retired superintendent from the same county, so I know the area, so.
You're
great.
infamous.
No, I don't think so. All right, well, hey, our topic today is the whole diploma change that is likely coming to Indiana. Right now it's in the talking stage or the rule-making stage, I think. But would you explain to our audience like what your role is? Like I know you chair a certain group that's involved in this, so you want to explain that?
Yeah. So the Fairbanks Foundation, Employ Indy, a lot of different, I guess, stakeholders throughout the state convened a group they call the iLab, which is looking at basically, the issue is not enough kids are getting certification beyond high school. We have a workforce, we have a talent issue in the state of Indiana. Right. And we know, I know one of the statistics they threw out is that 99% of, the future jobs and jobs that have been created over the most recent past, require some credentialing beyond high school.
Right.
And the problem is we kind of have a gap right now between what's happening with higher ed and what's happening in our high schools, and we're trying all these different ways to fill that, and haven't found a good way to bridge, what the high school experience is going to look like to those opportunities. And so, so a group has been convened. It's CEOs of major companies in the state, presidents of universities, K-12 folks. I think those are the main, partners. The Department of Ed, Katie Jenner is part of it, and Bob Boehning, a lot of legislators also part of it. So there's different committees that are doing the work. There's probably 100 or more people that are involved, but I chair the K-12 piece of that. So
Good.
Also along with me, Byron Sanders is a member of our group here. Sarah Kuntz. Who works for HEA, is also part of that.
That's great. Thank you for your leadership in this endeavor. That's great.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah. So how would you, what is this new diploma change basically? Like, I'm a high school kid. What does this mean for me?
Yeah.
I kind of wish I were a high school kid again. It'd be kind of fun.
Yeah. Well, I think if you're a high school student, that this creates a lot more flexibility and opportunities for you prior to becoming fully responsible for yourself. Give an example. My kids probably don't like I use them as examples, but my youngest son just graduated and is a nurse, and prior to going to college to do that, had very little experience working in healthcare. Had volunteered a couple times. We feel pretty fortunate that he got through that experience and still wants to be a nurse, and he didn't have to change majors and so forth. But we know that a lot of the students that are matriculating to university are not finishing. And it's even, it's lowest percentage Indiana's had in a really long time that are matriculating to college, and then an even lower percentage that are finishing.
Okay.
And so, how do we, if I'm a high school student, we're looking for ways to provide students meaningful, not just quick internships where they're there for an hour, but really meaningful experiences where they can come out of high school and they have a much broader sense of what they might want to do. Right. I'd say that the other piece for a high school student is those who, so if I don't know what I want to do, I have more flexibility in exploring those things. If I do know what I want to do, I have a lot of flexibility to start honing in on that sooner and kind of get a head start. So, we in Elkhart County, we're one of the leaders in the state in modern youth apprenticeships. We have a lot of different kinds of apprenticeships. I think that there's going to probably be legislation in Indiana to around apprenticeships, vocational ed, and kind of just redefining the levels and what that might look like. Right now, we've been going by the federal standards, but if you want to do, what you want to do, and you want to participate in an apprenticeship, it's an opportunity for anything from banking to insurance to healthcare. There's a lot of different opportunities for students to get into an apprenticeship, and it's not a modern youth apprenticeship is not. My dad was a carpenter. My dad went through the carpenter's apprenticeship, that is. That's valuable. We need, as you know, you guys know, we do know. We need
Yes.
My dad says all the time, there aren't any good carpenters out there anymore. So that's important, but the apprenticeships go beyond that too.
Right.
So.
And these are a little different than like a vocational apprenticeship as an adult. This is a high school youth apprenticeship, which is different than that, correct?
It is. It's different and similar.
And similar, okay.
I think one of the things that we need to make sure we're doing in the U.S. with this, and this is where when we mentioned before we were on camera, Switzerland and Germany.
Right.
One thing Switzerland has done a really good job at that we need to look at is they use the term permeability, but it's how can a student get through, let's say, a 3 or 4 year apprenticeship, and at the end of that earn through competencies, because we know that you can learn a lot on the job.
Absolutely, yes.
And so how can they get credit from higher ed institutions for those competencies that they're earning, and that creates the permeability. So if I change my mind, I get to the end of the apprenticeship, I want to do something else, or maybe even I want to go further. If we can get higher ed to start awarding credit for competencies, and I think that'll be helpful, and that's a little bit of what differentiates Germany and Switzerland. Switzerland. We hear many examples. Actually, the Ursula Reynolds, who ran the Department of Education in Switzerland for a long time, started out as a banker apprenticeship, and here she is running schools. And so, one of the foreign ministers in Chicago started out in, I think, retail apprenticeship, and got into foreign policy. And so I think Switzerland has a lot of examples of where people have started in those apprenticeships. They've created the permeability so that people can change their minds. And I think Germany's getting better at this, but we hear that students get a little more tracked in Germany. So
we're trying to not do the tracking thing. We're trying to have the flexibility built in.
Yes. Yeah.
Good. So in terms of how this affects diploma types, how is talk about that?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that has always seemed frustrating to me with the current diploma system is, we have employability standards in Indiana,
right?
And it's almost like we've put employability standards on schools and said, teach our kids how to be employees. And we know from research, and the Department of Ed cites in their presentations on the new diploma requirements, that outside of communication and math and some of those basic skills, all other skills are best learned in the workplace. And so we're trying to recreate a work situation in schools to teach these employability standards. And honestly, in our community, we have people push back on that. That's not your job. Teach our kids to write and do math. And so I think one thing that the new diploma does is there's a big emphasis on work-based learning and opportunities to go out and do those things. And so I think that's one thing. I think that silo in the graduation requirements becomes much more relevant to people when they're learning those skills in the workplace. There is still essentially a Core 40 diploma. It's called the Flex 40. It's the general GPS diploma. And I don't want to say general because it's not general. It's just different. I'd say both diplomas, the GPS and the GPS Plus, are both rigorous diplomas. But one is geared towards 40 credits. I would say that the difference for people there is that some of those credits can be earned in different ways now than just seat time. It's interesting right now, and you probably know this, like the Carnegie unit was, you sit seat time for an hour, and that's where the credit and all that came in, right? But the people advocating against that the most right now is the Carnegie Foundation. And the Carnegie Foundation is providing grants across the country. Indiana's one of 4. To pilot and model more competency-based systems where a student can show competency in something. They don't have to sit in a class for an hour, a day. So so some of those 40 hours. Now, some of those 40 hours will be earned traditionally sitting in a class.
Right.
I think the major difference is there. I think you're going to see classes that maybe were traditionally junior and senior classes, like government,
Yep.
U.S. history in some cases, are going to shift earlier.
Like freshman and sophomore year.
Yeah.
To allow more flexibility to go
At the
do
end.
other things at
Yep.
the end.
So the goal is get most of your requirements in your freshman and sophomore years.
Yeah, okay.
And then that gives you flexibility your junior and senior years. So that's, but you can actually, you can already earn credit through PE and participation in marching band.
Right.
But they're expanding that to
Okay.
things like Boy Scouts.
Okay. Like some more community-based things.
Right.
That don't necessarily happen
Right.
at school. Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. Running a youth group, helping to run a youth group,
Yeah.
or volunteering in different places. So.
Who's going to be in charge of issuing credits for these competencies, though?
That's when they say, "Hey, we're creating this, and we have a lot to work out still." I think that's a big one. I think that there's conversation, honestly, right now around student information systems. So Concord is a power school district.
Right.
There are other districts, and even in Elkhart County, that are using other things.
Absolutely, yes.
And then we all try to send our data and keep track of all this, and send it to a central place where the state grabs it. And maybe we ought to just all be on the same student information system,
Yep.
and design it in a way that it helps us capture those things. So
okay.
I think that's going to be a big piece. I do think that we're going to have to build out an infrastructure with career advising. Some of these sort of things that will also help to keep track of some of that. And I know, so Concord, Bago, Goshen, and Elkhart, we won a grant along with HEA as a partner for career advising, and the state's piloting these sort of things to. I think for some of that, what's this going to look like in the schools? So yeah.
That's
and then the
exciting.
GPS Plus is only 20 credits.
Yeah,
right?
that's the one that I've heard some criticism about, right?
Yep. That's 20 credits. But the work-based learning piece becomes, and students can be a GPS Plus student, can take all the AP courses, IB courses, whatever, dual credit, and there's still. I want to say some credentialing. The most recent version of the state's presentation has like seals they would put on it for, so you might be GPS Plus and be, have the college seal or something along those lines. So, but what the Plus diploma is really meant to do is to get people out in meaningful work-based experiences. So, I think there's a lot of infrastructure to build out, and I would say, for us working in iLab and art in our group, I know we're going to be doing some communication in August and September. They're rolling out a communication plan on things, but we're probably going to be starting with healthcare and maybe advanced manufacturing. But what we need to do there is really we have to get the industry people to the table, and I think there's going to be some efforts to do that, and essentially setting some competencies that kids are going to learn and be assessed on the job for. That I think are going to be really rigorous. An example for us, we have future educators. A lot of school districts do cadet teaching and different things. We've worked with HEA, Horizon Education Alliance, and Bago's involved in that, Goshen's involved in that, some of that work right now. But what we're doing is we're taking our future teachers, they're in a modern youth apprenticeship, we're paying them as like a para rate, actually a lot less than that. And they're learning on the job. They have a competency-based rubric, and then they have related instruction that comes alongside that. And what we're working on right now is we've talked to 5 or 6 higher ed institutions, Goshen College last week, and again, so if a student does let's say a 3-year apprenticeship with us, they would probably graduate after the second year, stay on and take some related instruction, but essentially they're mastering as much of the teacher evaluation rubric as they can in the apprenticeship.
Yeah, while they're in high school.
Right. And then Goshen College is looking at that to say, okay, so what holes do we need to fill to award credit for, these classes that we offer?
Right.
Maybe they just need to come and give a couple lectures, or but the kid doesn't have to start the class over again.
Yes.
And maybe there's some coursework that they can just give credit for, especially the field experiences already.
Yeah.
And so, so a student, the goal is for all occupations to be that way, that a student finishes the apprenticeship, and at the end of that apprenticeship, they can, potentially stop there. Maybe they want to be an instructional assistant or something else, but potentially we've given them a head start to become a teacher. And then stay with us. And there's a big return on investments if you're a construction company, for instance. And you need folks, and you need talented folks, and to get them in and start training them and have them be a part of your company and stay, and it's a big return on investment for that. So
absolutely. So one criticism I've heard is that this is all well and good for more urban areas, right? And we're one of the more populated counties in Indiana. What about the rural counties that don't have as much industry or even have a hospital nearby to do health careers? I mean, all of those things. How do you answer that as a criticism or worry, I guess?
Yeah. So I do think it's going to look different regionally. I think it's going to look different for Concord than it's going to look for Fairfield, quite honestly, or maybe somebody a little bit more rural. But, one thing we do know is that regional economies have a focus. Elkhart County is very RV heavy industry, and so we will probably have more apprenticeships geared towards advanced manufacturing and in that field. I think in rural areas you'll see a lot of agricultural apprenticeships. I think you'll see banking apprenticeships. I think you'll see, there's some healthcare, right?
Some healthcare,
kids might have to travel some, but I really feel like the flexibility in the diploma requirements will allow for that travel time too. One of the challenges that our committee was presented with is what about transportation, especially in a rural area. And there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of opportunities. If high school looks a lot different and a student's not coming to school for 5 days a week sitting in class, and maybe they're coming to school 3 days a week and they're out in jobs 2 days a week, that frees up our buses a little bit, right? So I think it's going to be a mix of, and in rural areas too, it's going to be a mix of the industry, employers, schools, intermediaries like HEA coming together to make sure kids have access to transportation to where they want to go. So our students mostly find their own way, but most of them aren't traveling very far to get where they're going. But I do know there are some very rural areas. Tara Bishop is the superintendent. Tara's in a very rural area. She's a part of this. And,
okay, good.
They figure it out.
Yeah, they do. People are resourceful when it gets down to it.
Yep.
Well, how about teachers? What are you hearing from teachers? Because I've heard for high school teachers, this is very scary. My course is that people aren't going to be taking foreign language maybe like they used to, and so I might lose my job and blah, 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 all that. How do you kind of respond to that?
I respond in a couple ways. Like one, I think everybody needs to educate themselves first and make sure you're listening to the presentations, having conversations. I do think there's been a little bit of jumping to conclusions on things at the beginning here, but part of that too is there needs to be a strong communication plan around this so people understand.
Right.
I would say if Concord has a fantastic music department.
Absolutely.
We're one of the best in the state, and we have well over 200 students in our marching band every year, and our regulars at the state finals. Right, kids love that program. That program is going to flourish because students now they have a lot of boxes to check with the current diplomas that don't always fit, right?
Right, it's true.
And so I think that the departments that are doing a really good job and are the electives that kids want to take are going to flourish. I think they're going to see more students. I do think that the elective areas that maybe kids are forced into that maybe aren't, and it's different by school, so it's hard to say.
That's right.
I mean, you might have a school where one elective department just has really dynamic people and the kids really love it, and maybe it's closely tied to the regional economy, but that's specific to that area, right? And so I think it's going to depend on school by school, but I do think that the departments that are flourishing, that are doing a really good job, I think are going to flourish, because I think students are going to want to take those classes, and now they're going to have a lot of freedom
and have
to
more
take
flexibility
as many of those classes
to
as
do
they
it.
want. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's an interesting way to think about it.
Yeah.
What have you heard from parents? So, I mean, how are parents feeling about
this is all happening really quick. So, I mean, when you ask that question, so as we've talked, like I've been engaged in this work, and so I know what's happening, but I presented to our school board and in a public meeting, talked about it there.
Right.
But I'm not hearing much.
Okay.
So it's going to be interesting, really. I'm not hearing much from parents, not hearing much from the people that we do have heard from or have talked with, even whether it be when I presented at the board meeting or we survey folks too. But I think parents are going to like the flexibility.
Yeah, I think they will.
I definitely think parents want to make sure that their kids are ready for whatever their next stage is, right? So I have a daughter that's a sophomore. She'll be she's a junior now officially.
Yes, right.
And as a parent, I want to make sure that Sarah is ready. Not only with the skills and dispositions she's going to need to be successful, but with the coursework and so I think that's still going to happen, and that's going to happen in the same way. I think that she probably takes a couple courses that she just is checking the old box from the Core 40 that maybe she won't take, which will free her up hopefully for more work-based learning, her senior year. But, this is going to take effect, I believe, with the current 8th graders.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think about.
Last year's
7th graders.
8th graders.
So their freshman year would likely be in effect.
And schools can opt in, but, at least at Concord, we're going to kind of make sure, we're going to do it carefully. We're going to engage people along the way. Make sure that we're moving everybody along with us. So I think I answered your question.
I think so too.
Okay.
So, the Department of Ed also says, hey, this change isn't going to be perfect. There's going to be iterations and improvements and all that. So is this going to be confusing for people? Because we're going to have it this way now, in 2 years we're going to change it, and then there's already been a lot of changes in the last 5 years.
Yeah, that would probably be, if I had to say there's anything concerning to me or that I worry about, would be, I as I mentioned earlier, I left Indiana and went to Michigan and then came back, and I came back 4 years later and said, what happened? And a lot happened in the time that I was gone. Yeah. And the diploma requirements seemed to shift even and change while I was gone. And so and to me that change wasn't meaningful enough, I think, is why we're probably going down to the road we're going down. But I do worry about, we had those changes, and then now, on the heels of that, and making sure, especially for our families, we have quite a few free and reduced lunch families. We have a lot of Spanish-speaking families that their students are going to be first-time college goers potentially, or first-time wherever they end up, and making sure that we're educating and communicating and just because it's not going to be perfect, we at least have to make sure that everybody really understands this, though, so that we don't leave anybody behind or, make any major errors, I guess, and, getting people ready for what that next stage is. So that's the piece to me. I think that, for us at Concord, I think a lot of the superintendents right now, we're learning, we're engaging, we're providing input to the Department of Ed and other folks. And then, once we get to the fall and we see and we get closer to the final rulemaking, which is the end of the fall, like November-ish, and we kind of have a better feel for what's this going to look like, then, we're going to have to spend a lot of time educating and talking with folks about it. So
and hopefully the state helps produce materials that help you communicate, right? The
and I think
plan
they
from
will.
the state
I think they will. Yeah.
One other thing. So Indiana's the only state doing this right now, right? Is that right? Yeah. Do you think that have you heard any national conversation about other states wanting to follow suit? Or I was intrigued that you said, Carnegie gave Indiana a grant to look at that competency piece, and four states got that grant. So I was just curious if you know anything about the national conversation about this.
Well, it is a national conversation, and I know Colorado, New York, I'm sure there are a couple other states that are involved in the conversation. But Indiana is going first. And, we don't need to get into the politics of it, but there's a super majority in Indiana.
That's true.
And I think there's the political will, and I think Indiana is a pretty good field in terms of what's happened here the last 5-6 years in terms of the number of kids going to college, finishing college, or getting credentials. It keeps lowering.
Good,
it's like what's
going
happening
down.
here. We talk about having a good economy, but yet our employers can't find good talent. So I think Indiana needs it. I think that's probably, maybe where we're going first, but I think the political environment is a big piece of that. So
Sure. Well,
bring it on.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Yeah, why not? Let's do it.
Yep.
One other thing that was going through my mind when you were talking about the logistics of all that is like staff. You will need more staff. I used to be a school counselor. I was a high school counselor.
God bless you.
For 11 years. Yeah, it was really fun. But I was just thinking about like tracking all of that, like those competency credits and the credits and the kid, overseeing the apprenticeship as the kid's out there. There's going to be some issues that come up. Like who's going to be tending to all that? So do you think you have to add staff to? So
like one of the things I think is really important in Elkhart County, we're really lucky that we have an intermediary in HEA.
With HEA, right.
What HEA's done is they partner with CareerWise, who's the national organization on youth apprenticeships, and so but what we find, so like occasionally we were asked to talk with different folks in different areas through the iLab. We talk to different folks in different areas of the state and have come to realize we're pretty lucky in Elkhart County to have that. Howard County, really wants to get some things going, but they don't currently have an intermediary. And so I think one of the things that's going to have to come from this is that the state's going to have to figure out almost like a permanent funding structure for intermediaries to help with this connection. And right now, as you know, with Horizon Education Alliance, we seek grants to pay for it, and to constantly be seeking competitive grants to fund yourself is just hard. And so I think that'll happen. And then like at our high school, we use Standards for Success software right now. Every student that is at the high school has their plan. We know the different boxes with the current, and we track those different boxes using software that talks with PowerSchool. I think that's going to be important. That's where I say that the student information system piece, I think, can help with that. But I do think, with this grant, for instance, we're going to be adding a career advisor. I do think that we're going to have some more human resources to help with that. Yes.
Well, as we wrap up, any last thoughts you would want people to hear as they're thinking about these diploma changes? Or
You know, I think what was good for you, what was good for me, you know, doesn't necessarily have to be what we do for our students now. I think that times are different. I think the economy is different. The jobs are different. People are changing jobs so often. I think the emphasis needs to be on lifelong learning and continual training and continual self and personal development to stay relevant in this economy, right? And my dad he first went to work in the steel mills in Lake County out of high school, and then soon realized he didn't want to do that and wanted to, you know, be a carpenter. But you know, he could count on that job for life. You know, that's not the way things are now.
Right.
We're a global economy, and so our kids need something different. And I think higher ed needs to change. I think it's too expensive. I don't think we have enough permeability between what we're doing and getting them there. They have to retake stuff, and so we need to work on that. And I think that I applaud the Department of Ed, because I think that we may force people to make some positive change for kids by us taking action. And I think it's going to be good for kids, and I think it's going to be good for Indiana. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm probably in the minority in that, but I just see it as a positive. So
I think it certainly can be. So I was fortunate enough to go on a study trip with HEA.
Good.
To Switzerland and Germany.
Yeah.
And I talked with some of those people. I talked to young people who were in apprenticeship programs and had a different, route than our kids do. I've always been very intrigued by it, and so Bob Bainey was on that trip too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bob is on our iLab committee. And
so he's the one. He's been a constant force through all these changes, and
yeah.
he really does have that vision.
He does, and he
that.
studies the issue.
Does.
And he knows.
Yeah.
Been very impressed with our legislators that are involved.
Yep.
Yep.
So anyway, well, thanks for joining me today, Dan. This is very interesting.
Yeah, you're
and
welcome.
Thanks everyone who's been watching the K-12 Corner today. We appreciate it. And our hope, in case you're wondering, is that these episodes bring together school administrators, teachers, parents, and can use some of the things we talk about as a resource, connecting people to the conversations that are happening in K-12 in our communities. So be sure to follow our K-12 Corner podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. And we hope to see you at our next episode. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. You're a great interviewer. You're like Johnny Carson.
Not really.